Hello guys, thanks for tuning in and welcome to another video. Today we're playing the Japanese Tier 9 destroyer Kitakaze on the map Greece in the Domination game mode. Some of you may be familiar with this ship because she might have been featured once or twice by a certain French YouTuber who happened to bring 3/4 of my viewers to this channel, so I don't think I need to really introduce you to her. I'll show you my commander build in a minute, but before we get to this point I have a little survey for you regarding my future uploads. Currently I'm a little bit short on replays I consider worthy of being uploaded, so just in case I won't have an interesting game during the upcoming week, I would like to know what you guys prefer. My highest damage game ever, once again in the Republique, which already occurred in March though and was unfortunately an one-sided Deadeye fiesta, or a smaller game from last November, which was really close, but I decided to not feature it yet because I made a bunch of silly mistakes. Though it's questionable if I can get that replay to run, since it's pretty old and I didn't save a copy of the corresponding game client on my hard drive. But just to get a general idea of what you guys would rather watch, I'm kindly asking you to leave a comment with your preferences. I can't promise I'll be featuring either, cause ideally I'd like to upload more recent games and I don't think you come to my channel to watch ancient gameplay, so keep in mind it's just a backup plan. Nonetheless, just in case, let me know what you think. With that out of the way, let's jump into the game and have a look at my commander. I don't play Kitakaze that much, so I only have a 19-point commander. I only ever touch her for a couple of games when I'm regrinding IGN gunboats for research points, so my commander build is basically just a compromise. And not one of those min-maxed farming setups you see especially on NA. It's very basic stuff with Concealment Expert, no main battery and AA Expert, aka AFT, or Fearless Brawler shenanigans. Although MBAAE, oh god what an acronym, the new AFT paired with Fearless Brawler might be worth a try once the concealment penalty is removed and if you have a maxed out commander. By the way, the reason I've never played Kitakaze that much is that Robin teased me with all these incredible Harugumo games on his channel shortly after the release of the IGN gunboat, so back then I took the free XP shortcut to get my hands on the Harugumo as quickly as possible, and only now, after probably half a dozen of regrinds, I've accumulated enough games to make my entry in the leaderboard. And guess what? I'm only one place behind the Kitakaze Grandmaster himself. What an honor and what a coincidence. Anyway, I took my Kitakaze into the alpha cap. Usually I'm not a big fan of cap contesting in big clumsy destroyers during the early game, but since the Felix Schulz on my side has even worse concealment and there was very little radar threat in this game, I decided to walk into the cap. Of course, the only radar ship in the enemy team, the Tallinn, decided to rush the Bravo cap and radared me in the process. I took some damage from her and was forced to smoke up because I shot back and also wanted to farm the BBs north of Alpha, but eventually the Tallinn paid the ultimate price for her needless aggression. Our Schulz detects the enemy Fletcher, so we immediately stop farming battleships and focus their destroyer. Fletcher goes briefly dark, so back to the Scharnhorst, which apparently wants to contest Alpha as well. She's already too close to us, so we can't lob our shells over the island anymore. So once again, target switch to the York and in the end back to the Fletcher, which will be spotted again in a moment. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb when it comes to target selection. DDs always first, then cruisers, preferably those without a heal, and only when these two classes are out of range or not spotted, feel free to farm battleships. For BB players themselves, CVs as targets are probably of even bigger importance, so if you get the opportunity to shoot one, you should usually take the shot, but as a DD you normally don't get to shoot CVs until the end of the game. We killed the Fletcher, but unfortunately she reached out from the grave and got the flesh wound achievement on our Schulz with her torpedoes. I left my smoke early because I was expecting torpedoes from Bravo myself, and because of the Scharnhorst rushing the island. We detected one single torpedo close to us, but most likely there were even more torps aimed at our smoke cloud. Now we have already created enough distance to Alpha that we can deal with the pushing BBs from relative safety. I had a decision to make here: take care of the push at Alpha or deal with the destroyer/destroyers and the Jambin at Bravo. Right now I'm essentially the only destroyer on my team since we already lost 2 and our Changmu just woke up, so the enemy DDs have free reign at the moment, which is a little bit worrisome. But if there's one DD at tier 9 that can handle a push, especially if the push is executed by tier 7 BBs, then it's a Kitakaze with her fast-firing guns and hard-hitting torpedoes. So as you can see, I decided to stay here and torture the enemy BBs. In hindsight, I think there are a few things I could have done better. First, I either should have gone for the bow or stern fire on the Gneisenau, or should have switched to AP earlier because I think she was running fire prevention. Second, I reckon there was just enough time to perfectly top the gap that the Scharnhorst was crossing. So this could have been an easy devastating strike. And third, going forward in my smoke instead of going backwards would have allowed me to have all my guns on target a little bit faster. Those are only minor mistakes, or rather oversights, but in the end all these little things add up, and they are not only what differentiates the top 5% from the top 10% of players in terms of damage dealt, but in my opinion can also have a huge impact on your win rate, because in one scenario an enemy ship dies outright and in the other it manages to escape with a sliver of health left, heals up and keeps impacting the outcome of the match. So right now I'm trying to finish at least one of those overly aggressive German BBs. Obviously they are not that aggressive anymore. As I said, pushing into a Kitakaze is definitely not recommended. I'm about to get a permafire on that poor Scharnhorst, but I won't stop shooting her until she eventually goes down. I'm also that kind of guy that will keep spamming the F3 command on low health targets until the ship is focused down. I know it can be annoying, but sometimes your teammates need some very broad hints before they start paying attention. By the way, is it still F3? I only ever use the comma rows that comes up when you press B, which you can't see in replays. Or I think in WoWs they call it Quick Commands Panel. I believe the term comma rows comes from the Battlefield series. Oh man, I used to love that series and I played so much Battlefield 3 and 4, those were so good games. But I digress. Scharnhorst will go down any second now. The game is looking quite even at the moment, although my team is slightly behind on points, so I will try to secure Alpha to give my team some additional points to work with. Now that all the big ships are scared away, no one can really stop us from finally taking the cap. King George is a very juicy target here. She happens to be the only ship left in range of our guns, and she also only has 26mm of plating, which Kitakaze can chew right through. In my opinion, 30mm of base penetration are totally sufficient to make the most out of Akitsuki and Kitakaze. You can pen the bow and stern of all cruisers even without IFHE, and it's not worth cutting your fire chance in half just to be able to penetrate the plating of high tier BBs. Instead, you can just keep shooting their superstructure for guaranteed damage anyway, and you will be stacking some nice fires on top of it if you further enhance your fire chance by taking Pyrotechnician. Got a little bit too greedy here and kept shooting for a split second too long, which will allow the King George to get a reset on me because I will stay spotted for the entire duration of my gun bloom, unless I smoke up, but of course I'm also way too stingy to waste a precious resource just like that. I just should have stopped shooting immediately before passing that island. Now my capturing process was delayed and I also took a bit of unnecessary damage. It's not a big deal because there's no doubt I will take Alpha eventually, and having to stay longer in the cap doesn't really affect my positioning that much. But again, it's little details like these, my team missing out on a few points because of the delayed cap, me losing 1000 hit points for nothing, that can backfire in the long run, and you should always aim to eliminate those kinds of sloppy mistakes in your gameplay. Like, you remember that smaller game I've mentioned earlier, the one I'm hesitant to show you? That was really a new level of sloppiness, even by my standards, and I'm guilty of playing notoriously sloppy, especially in DDs with heals. Sometimes I catch myself thinking, well, do I really want to try everything to mitigate damage? Or do I just keep smashing the W and S keys like a monkey and hope people don't figure out what the heck I'm doing because I don't even know it myself? Only to run into another gunboat in the late game, and guess what? Now I'm missing the extra 3000 hit points I lost earlier because I was too lazy to put a little bit more effort into predicting some BB salvos, and subsequently my team loses because I'm too low on health now to survive a gunfight versus a daring or something. But yeah, I think I've rambled enough about that topic and you got my point by now, and I'm sorry for sounding like a broken record, but I simply can't stress enough how important it is to preserve your HP in a destroyer. That's the reason you see me eventually smoking up while farming that Gneisenau now. I'm convinced I could kill her on my own without a smoke, but unlike Smoland, every point of damage on Kitakaze for instance sticks, so I want to keep these hit points for potential engagements. With the remaining Lightning and Östergötland, the Gneisenau was essentially already a dead man or woman walking a few minutes ago due to her positioning, so there was no point in trading hit points for a bit of damage on her. Not gonna lie, we have already reached the farming stage of this battle. At this point a comeback by the enemy team is very unlikely, to put it mildly. But I think we contributed to our team's victory quite significantly, although quite frankly the enemies played into our hands and didn't make it very difficult for us. Still, I think that's also a sign of a decent player, that some games appear to be just effortless. On YouTube you occasionally get comments like, well, my ship doesn't work like that, or I never get broadsides like these, but people sometimes don't realize that you made a correct decision minutes ago that led to the very advantageous position you're in now. Don't get me wrong though, I'm totally not pretending I had to put my carry pants on for this one. My team did a good job by not completely falling apart on the other side of the map in spite of not having a DD screen for a good portion of the match. The poor Gneisenau died an unpleasant death by 1000 cuts, and now we only have to deal with the 2 destroyers, since the Iowa will probably die before I even get to shoot her. Chasing DDs with Kitakaze is a thankless task because she's so slow and easy to detect. I think I saw Robin using radio location on his Kitakaze in his latest upload, and it's actually a valid choice because I ran into similar problems with Hayate. Her DPM is not one to underestimate, but both Hayate and Kitakaze suffer from their clumsiness, bad concealment and rather slow turret traverse. So if a DD gets a jump on you, you often take damage you could have avoided if only you knew the location of the nearest threat beforehand. And by taking radio location you can compensate for their biggest weaknesses because you can turn your ship and your guns in advance. It's definitely working out for me on Hayate. I don't have the commander points to afford RL on Kitakaze yet, and investing into it will probably result in the AFT power farming top of the leaderboard being out of reach for you, but it definitely makes these ships more comfortable to play. So where did the Lightning most likely go? If I were her, I would run away, more or less in a straight line, to create as much distance as possible to my foes, and resort to playing as a torpedo boat with a Kitakaze on my tail, but sure enough, the Lightning had other plans and runs into our Pommern and gets taken out quickly by the overwhelming firepower of my team. This leaves the Östergötland as the last enemy ship afloat, and trying to chase her down proves to be a tedious task, so I will speed up the replay, turn up the volume of the amazing Mirror's Edge soundtrack a bit, so sit back and relax, and I'll return to you as soon as something worth mentioning happens. So what do you guys think will happen? Will I die to radio location torpedoes? Or do we catch the Östergötland? Place your bids now. Either way, I would really like to take this cap before anything happens, and yes, we can secure it before we run into the Swedish destroyer. She doesn't really make an effort to dodge and takes her sweet time before she returns fire, and by then we've already dealt way too much damage to her to put ourselves in danger. With kill number 6, the game ends. A smooth ride indeed, hence the title. Not a lot of damage, but still my highest damage game in Kitakaze so far, and who knows, maybe I'll play her a bit more in the future to unleash her full potential. A moderate amount of base XP, not surprising considering a lot of our enemies were tier 7 ships and didn't really put up a fight. The detailed report shows that we were able to farm over 100k damage from those poor German BBs alone. Man, I too miss brawling in my Scharnhorst and Gneise now. But tier 7 matchmaking is so miserable these days that they will keep collecting dust in port, I'm afraid. That's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and don't forget to leave a comment with your preferences regarding my next upload. Thank you so much for watching. It's a pleasure to make videos for you, and I really hope we can get the channel to 1,000 subscribers this year. It would be an awesome milestone to reach. Anyway, I hope to catch you next time. See you soon, boys, and take care. I only ever touch her for a couple of games when I'm regrinding IGN gunboats. Gunboats? I only ever touch her for a couple of games when I'm regrinding IGN gunboats.